Nearly 12,000 people right now are experiencing homelessness in King County. That's a really big number for me to get my head around.
Homelessness is a complex emotional issue, so much so that for most of us, we quiet our compassion and we simply walk past those suffering. 2 years ago, my father and I began discussions about how we, as architects, could use design to create a path for everyone to get involved in ending homelessness.
We want to do this for those living on our streets, first and foremost, but also for each and every one of us.
Because homelessness affects all of us. We all carry a piece of it with us, regardless of our connection to it.
So my daughter Jen and I were both born in Seattle, and we absolutely love living here. We share so many similar feelings about how amazing this place is. And a big part of that is that we know that we live in a city that cares, that is willing to step forward to make change happen when change is needed.
Like how we all recycle.
Which is a great example. When I was growing up here, nobody recycled. Everything, I mean every little thing, just went to the dump.
But in 1988, when I was just 1 year old, Seattle led the nation in a curbside recycling program. A grassroots movement led by one person picked up recyclables from his neighbors in the Fremont neighborhood. And because of his actions, for the last 30 years, we have all recycled.
It's profound to me, the change that one person can create. Here's another big change that happened in our city. When I was a kid, you didn't swim in Lake Washington because of all of the residential and industrial sewage being dumped into the lake. In fact, the Post-Intelligencer called it Lake Stinko.
But by the time I was old enough to swim, Lake Washington was clean and beautiful, all set into motion by one person's research at the University of Washington. Today, it is still studied as one of the best lake restoration examples in the world.
And this, some 40 years ago, in my high school, in this city, and I am deeply ashamed to share this, there were students bragging about beating up gays in the parks on weekends.
But I went to the same high school as my father, and as horrible as that is, I can tell you that I had 2 friends that were openly gay students.
There are times, circumstances, conditions when we all know that we need to come together to take action.
It's like when a river is about to crest and flood a town, and everyone pitches in to stack sandbags and do whatever they can to help.
But today, Seattle is flooded with people unable to find housing. For 2 years now, our city and our county have a declared state of civil emergency on homelessness.
With people sleeping under bridges, under freeways, in parks, and along sidewalks, it's as if the floodwaters of homelessness have crested and are now flowing freely through our neighborhoods. This
is not the Seattle that I grew up with, nor is it the feelings that we both have about our city. We are at a critical tipping point right now, right here, on whether or not we are going to accept homelessness as some new normal for now and future generations, or if we're going to step forward and make the change needed.
Like the profound changes this city has made in the short 30 years between the both of us.
In this image, there are 9,000 faces, representing the approximate number of people currently living homeless in Seattle. Each face has been minimized so much so that they blend into the oneness of homelessness. This is how we see the homeless as a group. It is a major stumbling block.
We are all compassionate people. We all care, but often we don't know what to do because the problem is just too big, too monolithic.
But there is something we can do. When we zoom in to see just 112 of these faces, we can begin to see the uniqueness of each face.
And when we come closer yet, to see just 28 faces, something remarkable happens. We begin to see the individual and get a feeling for that person.
And then, when we come to stand fully in front of just 3 people, Caesar, Corey, and Shelley here, and I tell you something about each person, about how Caesar, despite being homeless, has continued to pursue his voice acting career. And Corey, who was a flight attendant for 6 years, married to a pilot, but is now, right now, sleeping in a tent in the Arboretum. Or Shelley, about his work as a vendor and a board member at the Real Change street newspaper. It is in these connections that we can begin to open.
And in that moment, we no longer see the huge monolithic issue, but instead a person like Tyler here, who lives in an RV with his father. Every person here today would want for Tyler what we have for ourselves.
And that is not just shelter, but a home and a community to live in. When we see the individual person within the larger issue, this is the beginning of the solution.
We have an idea for a path out of homelessness. It's called the Block Project. And what the Block Project is putting very small homes in people's backyards for those in need, one per block, block by block.
Now, before Airbnb, the thought of inviting a complete stranger into your home to spend the night while you slept was unthinkable. I mean, really, what if they were an axe murderer? But my mom, who is here today, hi, Mom.
Hi, Granny.
Sleeps just fine. In fact, better than fine. She loves all the new friends she's making. In the reimagining of our personal space, much like Airbnb and Uber have done for our homes and our cars, we know that this will also happen for our backyards.
We want to put a home on every residential block in the city. When we do this, everyone currently living on the streets would have a place to call home. And we're asking all of you here today to consider putting one in your neighborhood.
Now, as architects, we want these homes to be beautiful and thoughtfully designed and definitely durable and maintenance-free, but most importantly, we want these to be a dignified place to live. It is not enough to just offer someone shelter from the elements. We need to go beyond that. We need to be able to say, we believe in you, and we want you to succeed. The homes are 125 square feet, and they have within this a kitchen, a bathroom, a bed, storage, and a front porch to sit on, a covered front porch.
Each home makes use of the latest cutting-edge technology for us to live sustainably and responsibly on our planet. Our goal is that they'll all be Living Building Challenge certified, which is the most rigorous benchmark for sustainability. Yeah! In our built environment, meaning that the systems are going to be completely off-grid. All of the power comes from solar panels. All of the water, including drinking water, comes from roof water catchment and purification. And all of the wastewater is dealt with on-site through a composting toilet and subsurface irrigation for shower and sink gray water.
What this means is that there'll be no utility bills coming in the mail for this home.
With one of these on each block in the city, acting as little learning centers for sustainability, imagine how this will transform and educate our city on living green.
And even more importantly, though, than the building itself, is its connections to the neighbors. Ending homelessness is not just about building housing. As architects, we can tell you that's the easy part, nor is it about finding compassionate people to step forward. There are compassionate people everywhere. What this is about is giving compassionate people a path to step forward on.
We want to share the story of the first people that stepped up. This is Kim and Dan, shortly after they met Bobby back in June. Kim and Dan live in the Beacon Hill neighborhood, and Bobby, standing in the middle there, has lived in Seattle on the streets and in shelters for 10 years.
And this is Bobby, 2 months ago, having dinner with friends outside of his home in Kim and Dan's backyard.
So how did this happen? For starters, the number of folks living on the street really troubled Kim and Dan. And when they heard about the block project, they saw a way they could make a difference. And they loved how there was a place for everyone to get involved, whether that was with time, skills, funds, or simply a backyard. This is important because many of us want to help. We just don't know how.
What's also important to know is that Kim and Dan are regular people, just like all of us. Did they have worries when they first looked into this project? Of course they did. For example, they self-identify as introverts, and they were worried about their privacy. But in that very same time, they were motivated to look for solutions.
There was lots of questions, but Kim and Dan worked closely with Facing Homelessness, the nonprofit that now owns and manages the project, to find answers. For instance, they learned that each resident comes with professional services for their specific needs. Once they felt comfortable, they filled out an application and began the matchmaking process.
And here's Bobby, flying a sign downtown Seattle. He's 75 years old. He is First Nation Cree people, and he's working with Chief Seattle Club to have some of his needs met. When Chief Seattle Club looked into the block project through Facing Homelessness, they suggested that Bobby would be a good fit for the block project and for Kim and Dan.
All of the agencies involved in this project, including Chief Seattle Club, the Sophia Way Community Psychiatric Clinic, and Mary's Place, all work closely with Facing Homelessness to free up the host family of any responsibility coordination. And even the landlord-tenant contract is between Facing Homelessness and the resident.
So once all of the information had gone through and the check boxes checked, it was time to see if the three of them actually were a good fit. And what they learned was that Bobby and Dan both loved to play music. And Bobby and Kim really enjoy gardening. And what all three of them absolutely and unbelievably love is cats. For these four, it was love at first sight.
Next, Kim and Dan took handouts to all their neighbors on the block, explaining their plans to put a block home in their neighborhood, and to invite them to an evening gathering at their place to talk about any feelings and concerns.
Now, this is a really important part of the block project process. While the homes are completely legal under current zoning, we do not want to put a block home on a block if even one person is against it. This is not about finding housing for people that are currently homeless, only to make people that are in homes feel uncomfortable.
This isn't about trading comfort. This is about creating healthy, loving communities of neighbors.
And we are extremely excited to tell you that everyone on Dan and Kim's block, right from the beginning, including the neighbors that are adjacent to the backyard, Pete here and Scott and his family, were all 100% supportive and welcoming to Bobby to this block.
To give you an idea of how involved the larger community has been, all of the legal work for this project has been donated. All of the engineering, including structural, civil, and mechanical, has all been donated. All of the landscape architectural design was all donated. And almost all of the actual construction labor was donated. This project is community-funded, community-built, and community-supported.
Now, we all need our connections and our worth in community. For those that are living outside homeless, they must transition from being seen as the other to a place where they feel they belong. And for all of us living inside, whether it is homes, in apartments, condos, we too need our connections. We need to feel that we belong in this city and that we live in a city that cares about each other. This is an important part of the Block Project and its ability to bring people together and to turn strangers into friends.
Say I'm a neighbor on Bobby's block, and I cook too much lasagna. I can offer extra to him, or if it's laundry day for me, I may ask him if there's anything he needs washed. In turn, he may ask me if there's anything I'm in need of. By being neighbors, we get to know each other, and we can offer what we have.
This is an important part of this entire process, is the getting to know each other, because in that moment, we can offer what we have. And we have so many ideas that we've been talking about to facilitate that. One of the ones that we're very excited about is hooking up exercise bikes to each of the block homes' battery pack for the solar panels, so that when neighbors come to visit and they chat, they can also spin and literally give their energy to the block resident.
We're also working on an app that not only connects people on the block, but residents to residents and host families to host families, making it easy to reach out and take part. Everything being done on this project is driven by the question, can this bring neighbors together?
Now, we know on Kim and Dan's block, it has brought neighbors together. But really, can we do this across our entire city, block by block?
With Bobby's home just completed, I am thrilled to tell you that we have over 50 families that have already stepped forward to say yes, yes in my backyard. This is Dave and Vishala and their sweet dog Maria. They live in the Greenwood neighborhood and said they're fortunate enough to own a home and they have a backyard. Of course they would do this. And they've invited Caesar, who's lived on the streets for 5 years, to come live in their backyard.
And this is Lex and Marion. They live in the Crown Hill neighborhood, and they are 80 years old. And they have invited a young woman with a newborn that is currently being seen by Mary's Place to live in their backyard.
And this is Nathan and Sonia and their 2 kids, Sky and Ocean, and they've said yes, yes to Shelley.
Shelley, who will tell you himself that he is 64 years young, and I can tell you that he is maybe the sweetest man I've ever met. And what we know about him is that community is the most important thing for him, and that this family already makes him feel like he belongs. When we were standing on their front porch, getting ready for all of them to meet for the first time, I looked over at Shelley, and I was wondering about all the questions that must be running through his head, such as the very basic one, will they like me? And in that very moment, the door swung wide open, and Sky, with her beautiful smile, said, "Hello, welcome, come in." This is the Block Project and what it's doing. It is welcoming us all in. For the last 7 years, I have been taking pictures and listening to the life stories of people that are homeless. And I can tell you that what has been woven through every single one of those exchanges is the need to belong, to simply belong.
3 months ago, my husband Josh and I brought these 2 beautiful boys into the world. And in the 30 years between my father and myself, homelessness has become a crisis. And now, with another 30 years between myself and my children, our hope is that my kids will be able to grow up and look back and say that homelessness is no longer an issue because they live in a city that cares to make change happen when change is needed. Thank you.
Thank you.